Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a special interview here on News Talk WSIC. My name is Joe Berg. I'm the sports director here, and today I'm joined by Coon, MRN pit reporter, former Miss Sprint Cup, and also former Bachelor contestant. Kim, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I want to start there because that's such an interesting background. I'm curious what's more fun, doing The Bachelor or working with NASCAR?
Oh, definitely working with NASCAR. The Bachelor was like a very random, strange thing who my sister nominated me for, and it was so long ago that I hardly even remember it.
It's definitely an interesting path that you took, but been with MRN since 2015. How exactly did you get into NASCAR with Miss Sprint Cup and eventually landing it over at MRN?
My undergrad degree is in broadcasting and my grad degree is in marketing, and I was kind of tired of working in the corporate world and saw a job advertisement for Miss Sprint Cup and had worked in sports before and obviously had a background in all the things that Miss Sprint Cup covered, and kind of on a whim applied for it and ended up getting the job and did that for 4 years, and then was able to parlay it into the MRN stuff because they were looking for a female voice and a fresh young voice, and they had liked what they had seen me doing as Miss Sprint Cup and thought I would be a good fit. And so it's kind of just all snowballed from that.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm sure with being the pit reporter, you've seen some pretty interesting things. Now, before we get into this weekend and North Wilkesboro and all the fanfare with that, I want to talk a little bit about the last couple of weeks in NASCAR because we had something that used to be very prevalent but isn't anymore. We had a nice driver fight down on pit road. How close were you to that? Were you right up in there getting all the sound?
I actually had a Kansas weekend off. I was there though the weekend before Dover, where things were starting to kind of escalate a little bit, and people were continuing to kind of get their feathers ruffled. And then just like you and all the fans, I watched that and on TV and also listened to the MRN coverage, but was a little shocked. But we love to see passionate drivers, and that's the one thing I can say about scuffles and fisticuffs is it's just the passion they have for the sport bubbling over.
Yeah, absolutely. And, going to North Wilkesboro, it is a short track. So are we expecting any tempers to flare during that race? Or do you think because it's the All-Star race, it might be a little bit tame?
I don't know. You never know what to expect. It is the All-Star race, so it's not a points race. However, when you talk to any driver, they say they would wreck their mom for $1 million. And your point is, it is a short track, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see some tempers flare, or even guys that have had enough with other drivers, maybe taking it out on them in the All-Star race, knowing that the repercussions aren't as bad as if it were a points race.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely no real point repercussions going into the All-Star race, just a load of cash. Now, NASCAR hasn't been to North Wilkesboro since the 90s. It's interesting because a lot of the drivers, and I'm pretty sure every driver, has never actually raced on that old track, but they know the history, and I'm sure you are aware of the history with North Wilkesboro Speedway. What's kind of been the reaction with the drivers going there now for the first time in over 20 years?
Oh, yeah, they are all thrilled, and nobody has run a Cup car there. Definitely, obviously not the next gen. There are a handful of drivers that have been there in late models, but that's been over 10 years. And then obviously this week they're running some late models, and a couple of the Cup Series drivers will jump in a truck to run the Craftsman Truck Series race on Saturday. But in terms of folks actually having raced a NASCAR Cup Series car at that track, nobody in the field has, and everybody's thrilled, whether they're racing, whether they're fans. Nobody's raced there in the Cup Series since 1996. And the crazy part is there are a handful of drivers in the field who weren't even born the last time the Cup Series cars raced at North Wilkesboro, which is wild.
It is. And especially, I'm sure all those drivers know the history of the track, know who the last person to win in a Cup car there was. But my question is, because all of the fanfare that there is during All-Star Weekend, what are the chances of you getting in a car and taking a few laps around the new track?
Oh, gosh. Probably not. Definitely not driving. one. I don't know if they're doing ride-alongs. I imagine if they are, the list is quite long. So I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to be a spectator, when I'm not on air. And then when I'm on air, I'm going to be bringing all of the great storylines to the fans. But it would be pretty cool to be able to get in a car and go around the track.
Now, who are you expecting to be the most entertaining driver during the All-Star race with the radio chatter and the pit road chatter? Who's usually the one that people gravitate towards?
Oh, gosh, radio-wise, Kyle Busch is always entertaining to listen to on the radio. Ryan Blaney can be pretty level-headed, but when he gets fired up, he can be entertaining on the radio. And then, obviously, Ross Chastain, his aggression level on track has been extremely entertaining this year, but really everybody, because again, it's $1 million on the line. And so I think we could see some tempers flare and some sparks fly.
Man, we're joined here by MRN pit reporter Kim Coon. Kim, I really I want to know what your favorite moment so far in this season on pit road is. Is there something that you were there for? We know that the Gregson and the Chastain fight was pretty entertaining, but what's something that you saw so far this year?
Oh gosh, I mean that was extremely entertaining. It's so chaotic at the end of the races when you're trying to grab winners. I would say even like this past weekend at Darlington was super chaotic because we have that, skirmish between Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain, and Ross ended up at the Care Center. So that was at the very end of the race. So I had to run to the Care Center to make sure we talked to Ross. We only had 2 people covering pit road. So Jason Toy was trying to grab all the drivers 2 through 5, but we had William Byron headed to victory lane. So I literally had to sprint from the infield Care Center to victory lane at Darlington, which is not a close sprint. So I got my workout for the day, and was able to grab the victory lane interview. So that was crazy and chaotic.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a little bit closer at North Wilkesboro, being a short track and all. Have you been to the track yet? Could you tell us if it looks nice? What's going on over there?
I have not been yet. So this weekend, when I head there on Friday, will be my first look ever at the track in person. Now, I've obviously seen photographs, and I've heard people talk about the revitalization that it's undergone, and it looks fantastic via the photos I've seen. But I'm going to be alongside of a lot of the fans, especially the young fans out there this weekend, in terms of those who have never been there in person. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to bring back a lot of old fans too, for people who used to love NASCAR, who kind of fell away, but going back to one of the bread and butter tracks, as I would call it, of NASCAR, really grew up on the sport in North Wilkesboro. But it's going to be interesting to see who shows up. Now, who are you expecting to perform well this weekend?
Well, when you think about the All-Star race, obviously Hendrick Motorsports is always at the top of the list of when you look at teams that can win the All-Star race. I think they have 10 All-Star wins. And then, you look at a guy like Joey Logano, who's finished top 10 in the last 8 All-Star races, which is the longest active streak. I'd be curious to see how Brad Keselowski does, because he's had speed this year. I think eventually RFK, at least he will. Chris Buescher got to victory lane last year, but Keselowski would be an interesting win because he's never won the All-Star race, but he's finished second place 3 times. And then it'll be really awesome to see Kevin Harvick making his 23rd straight start there, and what should be his last start since it's his last full-time season racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. But again, it's hard to ignore Hendrick Motorsports, especially they got the last win that the Cup Series race at North Wilkesboro when Jeff Gordon got to victory lane. So it would be kind of cool knowing their, good runs in the All-Star race to see them win the first race back there.
That would be something. And you did mention Kevin Harvick. The car that he's driving this week is a little bit special. Driving the 29 car. What can you tell us about the fanfare on that and how awesome that's going to be? Fans
have been so receptive of that. It's very cool. And I was talking to somebody else, like Darlington Raceway and that whole throwback weekend is kind of continuing in a sense into All-Star weekend. We're kind of getting a throwback weekend 2.0 with that, and just with all of the history being brought up about the speedway and the return to North Wilkesboro. So it almost feels like a secondary throwback weekend.
Yep. And North Wilkesboro All-Star Race at 5 o'clock on Sunday, broadcasted by MRN right here on WSIC. Now, looking into the future here, what other races are you going to be at? Are you going to be at the 600, or what's your schedule looking like?
Well, I only have 2 more weekends off for the entire rest of the year. I'll be at the truck. I'll be broadcasting the Truck Series race for the Coke 600, but that race coverage is done by PRN. So I will be there at the track that weekend, covering trucks and doing some stuff with the Gold Star families. You know, it's such a big weekend to honor our current and past military members. But then I have Sonoma off, and then I have, the Father's Day off weekend like everybody else is going to enjoy. But other than that, I have got every race weekend until the end of the season when we crown a champion in Phoenix. So it is a busy schedule for me.
Oh, yeah, sounds like it. Now, which series out of all of them, Cup Series, Truck Series, which one's your favorite to be in the pits for and doing the reporting for?
Oh, they all have their benefits, but it's hard to argue against the Cup Series just because the competition level is so high. There's so many more drivers that have the potential to win a race when you go Cup Series racing. And there's so many more storylines you have to follow and notes you have to make and things you have to study. So the Cup Series is my favorite to cover in that sense, but they all have their quirks and their cool things. But I'd have to say the Cup Series.
Yeah, the Cup Series seems to be what everybody gravitates towards. Even as fans, we love seeing the high competition of that. Now, when you're at North Wilkesboro and you're going to be there watching the race, doing the reporting, obviously, is there going to be something there that, I don't know, maybe is going to be unexpected? Like, is somebody going to come out with another throwback scheme? Are we going to have an old driver showing up at the track? I know there was always rumors, hey, maybe Jimmy will come back. Hey, maybe Dale Jr. will come back and race for the All-Star race. Is there any inside information you might have on that for us?
Not that I have. Your guess is as good as mine, so I'll be just as surprised if we see something like that happen. But it would be awesome. Very cool.
Absolutely, it will. Well, Kim Coon, MRN pit reporter, joining us here for a special interview. Anything on the horizon here that you want to throw out there for either North Wilkesboro or the future races?
Well, North Wilkesboro is something that everybody got excited about. I have to say the Chicago Street Course also is going to be such an incredible inaugural race. I'm very excited for that. The entire season, really, but those two things stand out to me. This kind of throwback return to North Wilkesboro Speedway, and then the very first time we are going to see Cup Series cars racing on a street course. It's going to be absolutely fantastic over July 4th weekend, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. Have the drivers already been talking about that one and dreading going to a street course, or how are they receiving that?
I don't know if they're dreading it. I think they're excited to see, who has what it takes. And obviously, anytime there's an inaugural race somewhere, everybody is gunning to be the first winner at a course. And so who knows who's going to take home the checker flag there.
Well, now, if you had to make a prediction on who would win the inaugural street track race, who would you be looking at?
Oh, my goodness. It's hard to say, but you look at, drivers that are also good at road courses, just because of the nature of a street course is closer to a road course than it is an oval. So a guy like AJ Allmendinger is probably somebody I'm very curious to see how they do. But honestly, the Cup Series has gotten to where we go to so many different circuits where you have to turn left and right that we don't have these kind of road course ringers anymore. Everybody has to be relatively good at racing outside of ovals. And so the competition level has been stepped up. You look at a guy like, Chase Elliott, who is really great when we are going left and right. Kyle Larson. There's so many names that could take home the checker there.
Well, it's definitely going to be fun, and we'll definitely be watching over here at WSIC, seeing who wins that first race. But thank you so much for joining us today, Kim. I hope that there's no issues over at North Wilkesboro. Everything goes smoothly, and I really hope that the fans accept it and we end up having more races back at North Wilkesboro, because it is such a nice venue to see cars go around, and with the history there. Hopefully everything goes splendid this weekend.
I cannot agree more and echo that sentiment. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great weekend. I think the stands are going to be jam-packed. The energy is going to be electric, and I cannot wait till the green flag waves on Sunday.
We can't wait either. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kim. You have a great one, and we'll be seeing you hopefully on Sunday.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You have a great rest of your day.
Take care.
That was Kim Coon, MRN pit reporter for the NASCAR Cup Series and Truck Series and Xfinity Series. You can catch the All-Star race right here on News Talk WSIC Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern, broadcast by MRN.